Senator, under the Missouri Nonpartisan Court Plan, independent commissions select 3 candidates for judicial vacancies, one of whom the governor then selects. Then, during general elections, the judges must undergo a retention election and maintain a majority approval rating. This plan is not without critics who say the plan encourages too much political bias in the judges' decisions. Where do you stand on the nonpartisan court plan?
I support a nonpartisan merit-based selection process for appellate judges and the judges from the large circuits. I think that's absolutely essential to having justice in a court system that we can have confidence in. A few years ago, there was a high-profile Supreme Court judge race in Illinois that, at least on the eastern side of the state where there's a lot of bleed over from the advertising, it was absolutely god-awful, and I don't know how anybody in that state has faith in anything that comes out of that court. So having that is, I think, essential. Is ours perfect? I think we could stand some changes. One of the things that, Missouri is the founder of the Missouri Plan, and it is the nonpartisan model that a number of states use. But I'm not aware of any state that has it exactly like we do. And what I think needs to change is a couple things. First of all, I think the terms of the appellate commissioners are too long. They serve for 6 years. Governor Holden appointed someone in December of the last December of his tenure, who was in there for 6 years. Governor Blunt will have that opportunity again this December. I think that exercises too much control, in a sense, from the political grave. That shouldn't happen. I think if it's going to be somewhat politically responsive, it should be focused on the governor, who we all vote for, not particular interest groups that are adept at working with the system. But that's a main consideration that I would like the legislature to address, and also look at how those appellate commissioners are selected. We have 3, one from each appellate judicial circuit or judicial district. There are 3 appointed by the governor, and perhaps the last pick should be by the governor, whoever that may be.
Thank you, Senator Koster.
Before 1940, the political machines in this state controlled the selection of judges. And then in 1940, the Missouri Nonpartisan Court Plan came into effect, and it is now the model for 34 states around the country. And everywhere around the country, it is called the Missouri Nonpartisan Court Plan. It's a good plan because it does several things. It allows for, it selects the best quality judges. It allows people to have the final say. And it's the least political way that we have found to select jurists in the state. Now, there was legislation that came up, I believe, in this last session, either in 2007 or 2008, to place the selection process, the judicial panel, under Chapter 610, the Sunshine Law that we were talking about earlier. And what that would mean is that all of these interviews would happen in open public. Now, here at the university, think about the effect of handling the job interview for the next president of the university in an open public, maybe in an auditorium like this where everyone was listening in and people were asking political questions. You would never get a president of a university somewhere else in the country even to come and apply here, because no one would go through a job interview like that. In order to attract the best and the brightest, people, men and women who have successful practices around this state, and the mere inference that they are applying for the judiciary could dramatically affect their livelihood, it's appropriate that there are certain safeguards toward the privacy of these job interviews.
Thank you. The next question comes from Mark Welsh and will be directed first to Senator Koster.
Senator Gibbons, I know you've already touched upon this subject, but this goes out to both of you. According to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, Missouri has led the nation in meth lab seizures for the past 7 years. In the next 4 years, how do you plan to keep that bust rate up and decrease new labs from proliferating?
Well, first, nobody has to explain to me the effect that methamphetamine has had in our state on families, on communities, and on the individuals themselves. I was prosecuting attorney in western Missouri. The scourge of methamphetamine is actually worse in western Missouri than it is in eastern Missouri. And you can spot the burned out smiles from the rotted teeth, the propensity to commit homicide on this drug, and the extraordinary addictiveness of it. Methamphetamine is far more addictive than cocaine or heroin. In fact, you become addicted to it after 1 or 2 usages. Last year, I proposed the Missouri Methamphetamine Act. It is the broadest approach to methamphetamine that we have ever seen in the Missouri General Assembly, because you can't hit this thing from just education or just law enforcement or just treatment. You have to hit it from all fronts on the same, at the same time. And so what I proposed was pulling the Montana methamphetamine advertising, high-impact advertising strategy that has been so successful in the western states, adding that to mandatory minimums for the manufacture and distribution of methamphetamine, increased treatment for users at the C felony level, pseudoephedrine monitoring, increased pay for sheriff's deputies, and the elimination of parental rights in certain circumstances when the cooks are at work with young children in the house, as happens all too often. Pursuing that strategy would be my plan for going forward on the issue.
Thank you. Senator Gibbons.
I think to address this problem, there's three things really that I would focus on. First of all, we passed this year an electronic log system to prevent people from going from store to store to store, purchasing multiple quantities of the essential ingredient, ephedrine, pseudoephedrine. It is, we'd passed a log law before. It was a paper log. It was effective. It helped reduce the incidence of meth labs for a while, but unfortunately they're coming back. This electronic log would be full-time or real-time reporting, so you really cut out that ability to go, because my understanding is that a $9 package of Sudafed would bring $50 if you take it to the meth cooker. If that is not success, that needs to be fully implemented. It's been slow in coming to fruition, and if that is not successful, then I think the next step on the road is for us to call that a scheduled substance, so it'll only be available by prescription. Oregon's the only state in the country that's done that. It is something that if we've got a massive problem like that, if this electronic log is unsuccessful, and I don't think we had that much time given Mexico's changes, if that's not successful, then I think the next step is we just have to call it a scheduled drug and dispense it by prescription and cut it down that way. I agree with Senator Koster with regard to Montana has an excellent example of how you can bring public awareness to this drug and the consequences of it in a very real and graphic and disturbing way, which I think is important as well.